Shoot me. Come on.
No, I can't shoot.
Do it! How'd you like that?
How do you do it?
Magic.
I'll perform this feat in a manner never before seen by yourselves or any other audience anywhere in the world.
The audience loved it.
This trick is top-notch.
We need to celebrate.
A real magician tries to invent something new. It's something that other magicians will scratch their heads over.
I suppose you have such a trick.
Actually, I do. It's the one they're gonna remember me for.
What happened?
It was the greatest magic trick I've ever seen.
I need to know how he does it. He has no trick. It's real. Every great magic trick consists of 3 acts. The first act is called the pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary, but of course, it probably isn't. The second act is called the turn.
He's obsessed with discovering your method.
The magician makes this ordinary something do something extraordinary. Now you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it. That's why there's a third act called the prestige. This is the part with the twists and turns, where lives hang in the balance.
Julie, come on!
And you see something shocking you've never seen before. This was built by a man who can actually do what magicians pretend to do.
Real magic.
I know what you really are.
How does he do it?
You want the truth?
Nothing is impossible.
Abracadabra.
No more secrets.
Secrets of my life.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinememes. This week we're here to talk about The Prestige. It's our first podcast, so bear with us.
Yeah, there's some growing pains.
These are some growing pains, but we're gonna get it fixed for next week for sure. This podcast is called Cinememes. It's with me and Albert. Gonna be every week or every 2 weeks. And yeah, so this one is over The Prestige, which was written, directed by Christopher Nolan. The cast starring Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Andy Serkis. Yeah, and then
David Bowie randomly.
Yeah, David Bowie was randomly Tesla, which was an interesting.
Like, I didn't recognize him in the role. I'm just like, wait, what? He was in this movie?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I literally didn't know it last night until you were like, wait, David Bowie on the IMDb, and I was very confused by that. I guess I'll give like a quick brief synopsis of the movie.
Yeah. Go for it.
So people who haven't seen the movie, basically it starts out in 1890s like London with the main character Robert Angier, which is Hugh Jackman, and then the second character, which is also the main, Alfred Borden, which is Christian Bale. These two are basically plants who at the start of the movie work for a magician, which is Ricky Jay, I believe his name is.
Yeah, so Ricky Jay's a real magician who also recently passed away. So
yeah, I believe it was November 24th is when he passed.
Yeah, a lot of like my magician friends in the community were posting. Yeah, so he like does a lot of work in, I believe, like theater and movies as well. So he was kind of like a renowned consultant for a lot of magic films. I think there's not, like Shade, I believe. No, that was someone else. But yeah, he worked in a lot of movies.
He was one of the most famous magicians, right? Like, even I knew who Ricky Jay was when hearing about him.
I think he's like one of the more famous magicians from the previous era, obviously like pre-David Blaine.
Oh, yeah, like David Blaine.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Okay. So, as the movie goes on, Julia, which is Robert Angier's wife, is like the stagehand who... or what is it called when they're the magician's assistant? So So she was held up in like a water tank doing a trick where basically she is held upside down and has to like do an escape from a locked water tank. This escape goes wrong when her and Borden kind of agree to do a riskier knot called like a slip knot. Do you know any differences between the knots that they do in the movie?
Nope. I've never personally tried escaping out of anything. So, but I'm learning lock picking right now. So maybe I'll move up to that.
The knots, that'd be sick, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try a live water escape on stream or something.
That would actually be like one of the coolest things on Twitch if you like did like a
but
full-on Houdini.
Yeah, if I died though, that would not be so
No.
cool.
You would die and get your channel banned. That would not be good.
Yeah. Not worth.
So Julia fails the escape and ends up drowning. So this devastates Angier, which makes him and Borden like mortal enemies for the rest of the movie. As the movie goes on, they launch their own magic careers, and Borden develops a trick that Angier could never figure out, and the trick was called the Transported Man. The premise of the trick was he would go into like a closet, and then he would appear on the other side of the stage like instantaneously. So the main part of the movie is Robert Angier trying to figure out how Borden does this trick. And their ingenue, is that what they called it in the movie?
Yeah, so I think an ingenue in modern day terms is sort of, it would be what we would call a creative consultant. And all the famous magicians have one. So David Blaine has like a whole team of people. There's this guy in UK called Dynamo, and he literally has a warehouse with like every single magic trick that possibly could exist. And when they need to come up with an idea for like a TV special, they'll just like look through everything and basically come up with a trick for Dynamo to perform. And this is super, super common with most TV magicians.
That's actually really interesting. So they like, is it a big thing in the magic community where you will buy tricks from other magicians to like?
Yes, there's actually a whole marketplace, and it's not like some underground thing. It's like literally, it's literally a marketplace that like if you looked it up right now, you could easily find stuff, and that's how most magicians make their make their livelihoods actually, because like most people aren't going to become famous, so they can make money from selling their inventions essentially.
Interesting. So you can pretty much go online and buy like a book to teach you how to do.
Yeah,
pretty much anything.
It's not just books now. Like you can buy DVDs, you can buy streaming downloads, like where you can stream a tutorial of how to do something. And yeah, it's just there's like a paywall behind it, but it's totally legal, and the community is pretty small. So if you like illegally pirate stuff or you like rip someone off, like word gets around fast. And if you ever try to do something professionally with it, like you'll just get blacklisted.
Yeah, people won't want to do anything with you. That makes sense. So after Julia's death, the movie goes on to Borden getting his own transported man, and Angier eventually shows up, and he catches him doing Borden I think is doing a bullet trick, and Angier goes on stage and slips a little piece into the bullet and shoots 2 of his fingers off. Which is pretty crazy. Yeah. What else? Like, what was like your favorite? Or sorry, does that like happen often where bullet tricks are actually like super dangerous and like somebody could like slip something in, or no?
Oh, this is interesting. The bullet catch is something that even I've like considered trying to maybe learn, like on a smaller scale. But usually, the methods are pretty safe. They're foolproof. I think a lot of them revolve around like blanks or swapping out the bullet when you're loading to the gun, and then so like you're never actually firing a real bullet. But I know there was like this whole like kind of biography thing of this guy who did it, and then there was like someone in the audience who kind of knew how to do it, and they basically insisted that they load the gun themselves, and like this whole thing happened, and then the guy died on stage.
Holy shit!
Right.
Yeah, I know Penn and Teller, anytime that they do it, they like check the barrel like over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
To make sure.
And David Blaine's done a version of it where I feel like he did it like the most like stunty way you could do it, where like they just had him hold a cup and a mouth guard. Like I think a lot of the bullet catches are very theatrical, right? You know you're not actually shooting a bullet. but his version is like they literally did it in slow motion, and then they just like locked his head in place, and then they had a gun with a laser pointer, pointed into the cup, and then he had like a whole mouth guard, and like it was designed to be like filmed, and so it wasn't really magic, just crazy.
Was that? Did he like have to catch it with his teeth? Is that like the?
No, like so his version, like so the catching with the teeth thing is like literally impossible. You can't do that. So his version was he put a cup in his mouth, and then they would shoot the bullet into his mouth. Yeah, and they made a mouth guard so that like his jaw wouldn't shatter. But it's still stupid to do that.
Still stupid crazy. Yeah.
Stupid crazy. Yeah. So, but usually, like in a theatrical sense, it can't really go wrong unless you mess your prep up, or you don't like successfully swap out the bullet.
Okay. So the movie goes on to where Robert Angier gets Borden's diary. After Borden discovers Angier's the way Angier was doing the trick, this is spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Get out if you haven't
you
seen
should
the
probably
movie.
get out
Go
of
watch it
here.
right now. It's a really good movie.
It's a really good film.
And granted, I think even if you knew how, like, it's one of those movies where upon second and even third viewing, you still get so much more out of it, kind of like Fight Club or Memento. Once you know the twist, it changes how you view everything.
Yeah, I watched this movie for my third time for this viewing, and you just see so many more things because there's like it's done in a stylistic way. It's not played from beginning to end. It kind of is like it starts out with it starts out with him already in jail.
Yeah, so it almost starts with the the whole thing is told non-linearly, just because for the most part it's told through the perspectives of each magician's diary perspectives, which you find out later that they both knew that the other person was going to read it, so they're just like, fuck you at the end. Like, you'll be reading this in your cell or whatever.
Yeah, the end of each diary ends with I know that you're reading this. So like the whole diary was kind of them just like fucking with each other. But the way that Angier does the trick is he went and sought out Tesla, and Tesla basically created in the movie a machine that could clone anything. So Angier, to do his transported man, would basically clone himself and kill himself at like the same time. So he would clone himself to like spawn behind like the crowd, and then his original self would fall through a trap door and like get trapped in water and die. So Borden basically goes down to where the trick happens, and he sees Angier in the water, and Angier in return frames Borden for killing him. But Angier was a very rich lord, and he only went by the name Robert Angier for his
stage name.
Yeah, it was his stage name, and basically faked his death, framed Borden to figure out how he did the transported man. The way Borden does it, and the way you figure it out, is Borden actually has an identical twin brother. And one of the coolest things is at the start of the movie, they talk a lot about sacrifice and how you need to be, as a magician, sometimes you have to be completely dedicated to your craft. And the way that they show this at the start is with a older Chinese magician, right?
Yeah, there's like a Chinese magician who, the whole idea is like he walks like he has, like he has a bad back, right? He's like hunched over, and you find out that the reason he does that is because for this trick with the goldfish, he has to hold the goldfish bowl in between his legs, and him having a bad back is the motivation for him to walk like that. And so he has to live his entire life. He has to live a lie for his entire life in order to build credibility for this one trick.
For his one masterpiece that nobody can figure out. So I was gonna say he pretty much makes the goldfish appear out of nowhere. So they were tasked with finding how to do that. And the way that Borden lives his life dedicated to sacrifice is that his twin brother and him share the spotlight, where one day they'll be Fuller?
Fallon? Wait.
Oh, Fallon, yeah.
Fallon is the name of the
it's his ingenue, but it's really one of the brothers at every moment. So they take turns being Borden, and then one of them will be Fallon when the other one is being Borden. So basically, the big thing about the two fingers getting shot off was that the other twin had to chop his fingers off in the exact same way. So that's like a huge sacrifice that they had to make.
Yeah, and like that detail was actually hinted at like super early on. There's a like in the God, I remember the wife comments on how wait, hold on, I have the exact quote. She says, so she's redressing his injured hand, and she says, "I don't understand, Alfred. How can it be bleeding again?" And then it's because that was the moment when they decided that they're going to go through with the like committing to the act. So he cuts his fingers off,
like completely committing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like it already healed, but because the other twin had to do it again, like
they had to redo it. Yeah.
But like, if as a viewer, you don't have knowledge of that, so you think, you know, it's just like a really bad wound, right? It's like, man, the like medicine back in the day just wasn't so good. I guess it.
Yeah, that's something you for sure miss on your first viewing, but on your second viewing, you like kind of catch it. And you're like, oh, like that's why. The brothers had names, right? And if you like watch the movie, you can kind of like figure out who is who. There was Freddie
and Alfred.
And Alfred.
So Alfred is like the one that is like the singular person, but I think one of the brothers is actually named Alfred, and the other one is Freddie.
Yeah, it's super cool. I kind of want to rewatch it again and like try and figure out like the exact moments that they switch, because you can kind of tell it with the wife Sarah. She can tell herself because she even says like a quote like, "Some days you mean it, some days you don't." When Borden says like, "I love you," and then she'll say like, "Oh, today you actually do mean it." Yeah,
which makes it hurt when you don't.
Yeah, and
it's more when you don't.
In the movie, she actually ends up killing herself at some point because of the split personality. Like she couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah, and there's like I think Sarah is like the most like when you want to know who is currently in play. I think she's the most obvious one. There's like the part where Borden like surprises her with a key to a house. And then she says, like, when you asked last week, you said we couldn't afford it. And then he says, "You caught me in the wrong mood."
You caught me in the wrong mood. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then she says, "But you went through all the," and he cuts her off and says, "Sir, I'm allowed to change my mind, aren't I? The act is taking off. Maybe soon I'll get us into bigger theater. Things will work." So I think as the viewer, you kind of rationalize like, why is this guy so bipolar? Like, you know, maybe this guy is really temperamental, and you just don't. And the idea of like, this is something that happens in magic a lot, where you basically tell your audience how something is done, and then you go out of your way to prove like you're not doing it the way that it's normally done.
Yeah.
But in reality, you actually are, but you kind of by bringing what's that called? It's like lamp shading, right? It's like if you make fun of yourself first, people can't make fun of you.
Mm-hmm.
Or it kind of takes the wind out of the sails. And so in magic, it's like you kind of bring up the possible solution and disprove how it could be done. It's like, oh, because I'm not doing X or not doing Y, I can't possibly be doing this. But then you do it.
But then you are doing it.
And so, but in their mind, it's like, there's no way he did that when he just said, you know, that's not how he was doing it.
Yeah, magic has always been super interesting to me, but I've never like gotten into it. How did you get into magic?
Dude, I feel like I was just like every other teenager, but David Blaine was really big. And street magic was like the new in thing. And my dad tried to get me into magic way before David Blaine, but they only sold these cheap magic sets, which were just, you know, plastic props. There's like a barrel with a pirate inside, and you like stab it with swords, and then you take it out. It's like, oh, there's no holes in it. But it's like no one's going to carry around a plastic barrel with them in their everyday bag.
Go. Yeah.
And back in the day, you could only order magic tricks off of magazines. So you would, God, magazines is like a thing from so long ago. Does anyone else still use magazines?
I haven't. I see magazines in like the store when I go buy groceries on like the rack, but like that's it. I don't think I've ever read a magazine.
Yeah, but back in the day, you would get a subscription to different magic magazines, and then it would send you the magazine, and they have like articles, you know, about like how to be a better magician or how to do X or Y better. And then they have like a catalog ad section where they would describe tricks and who created them, and you would based on the reputation of the person and the description of the trick, you would then decide whether or not you wanted to buy the trick. Yeah, and then you would call in and then you would order it. So you couldn't really see like what it looked like. You would have to go off of the ad copy. And like I didn't know this. I was like 8 years old, and so the only thing I had was like I think it was like a Costco magic set. It's like Marvin's Magic. But David Blaine kind of changed the game for a lot of people because the stuff he did on TV was impromptu magic. You didn't need like props or gimmicks. You just needed a deck of cards or ordinary objects. And then as a response, a bunch of magic websites popped up, which was like the first time it's ever happened. And they would, instead of selling like props, they would sell like DVDs and downloads. So you could just instantly like download the file and then you can watch how it's done. And
I'm sure that helps with like the doing process, right? Like learning the trick rather than just reading something, actually seeing like the hand motion and like how it's done.
Yeah, of course. And they kind of like modernized it too. Like it's a little bit cringe now. I feel like they went with it too edgy. Like they were trying to be super cool, and they would film trailers that made magic look really hip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like aimed towards like kids who wanted to be really edgy and
like
emo.
super cool. Yeah, super
cool. But in reality, if you think about it, if you're a kid trying to learn magic, you're most likely
here in your room 10 hours a night just practicing
and
the same trick over and over.
Yeah, you're impressed. You want to impress girls, or you want to get people to like you, so you learn magic tricks. Which I think magic gets a bad rap for that. I think it's definitely changed in the past like few years, but that definitely was the stigma for a really long time. It's like you were a nerdy kid who had too much time on their hands. I guess it still fit the bill, but you know. It's more socially acceptable to be a magician nowadays than it used to be, unless you were like David Copperfield.
It's actually pretty cool, I think, to be a magician nowadays because of shows like Penn and Teller's like Fool Us. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, Fool Us is like a super cool show. If you guys haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. For the movie, who do you think sacrificed more? Who do you think like made the bigger sacrifice? Do you think it was Borden with pretty much living a double life? And I think he ends up dying. I don't think you ever see it. Or one of them ends up dying in jail, I would assume.
Alfred, which is like the more angry dude, the more angry brother to Death. I'm pretty sure he died because I think he felt bad for Freddie and his wife, right? Because they were the ones that were happily married and had kids.
Correct, yeah.
And he was sort of the reason why their marriage wasn't doing so well, because he had to pretend to be
in love with this girl. Yeah.
In love with someone that he wasn't in love with.
Didn't care about at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like when Sarah dies, and Freddie, the brother, is with Olivia, who was kind of like Angier's assistant, who was sent as a double agent to try to get.
That was like a triple agent.
Yeah. And then she ends up like falling in love with Freddie Borden, and then when his wife dies, she's like concerned, right? It's like, you haven't spoken about her, Freddie, not once. And then he asks, who? Don't be cruel. Why would I talk about her to you? Because she was part of your life and now she's gone. And then he doesn't say anything. And then he says, you want the truth? I never loved Sarah. So basically he's... And so
I mean,
like as a viewer, you're just like, this guy is...
You get really confused because you're like, wait, I see you like buying her house, like you have a kid with her, right? And then you just say you never loved her.
Never loved her.
Yeah. And that's something that like, I think this movie actually does a good job at confusing you on your first go around, because nobody expects that he's like an identical twin brother who is masquerading as like some other man.
Yeah.
Back to like the question, I would personally say, I think that weirdly enough, I think Robert Angier sacrifices more, because it's like something crazy where he like legitimately is killing himself every single night for his trick.
That's also like a whole philosophical debate in itself, which I am not well equipped to.
Yeah,
like, I have not done my appropriate research into it. Like, have you ever heard of that, like the teleportation thought experiment?
I think I have. But can you restate what it is again?
It's like, okay, so the idea is if you go into a teleporting machine and it deconstructs you down like molecule by molecule, atom to atom, until you're like, like you're just like disintegrated.
Yeah.
And then there's a separate teleportation machine that then recreates you exactly, right? Like exactly how you were constructed. Did you actually die? And then the other one is just like a perfect clone of yourself? Or like, is that the same person? And I think the super simplified version of it is, if you believe the other, like if the reconstructed person is not the same person, then you believe in the concept of a soul.
Yeah, it's like the ship of Theseus is the one I'm more familiar with, which is like it's basically a ship, and then over time every single part gets changed out. Is it still the same ship? So yeah, which is like super interesting, and I'm not a philosophy major, so I can't like answer the question.
Yeah.
But
yeah, this is a movie. This is a movie club, not a philosophy
movie club,
club.
not a philosophy class, guys. But I think it's like pretty insane that he would be willing to do such a crazy trick where he literally is sacrificing his life every day. But I guess like the one who is sacrificing his life doesn't ever feel it, or I don't know, because it's so crazy because it's still him on the other side, and then the one's dying. Yeah, it's just like
I can imagine. Like, can you imagine? Like, say you're going. Can you imagine every day you have to go skydiving, and you jump out of a plane, and you know that when you hit the ground, that you'll suddenly appear somewhere else, all fine, but like the anticipation of the pain you're gonna have to go through.
Oh, and then he's on the stage and he knows exactly what's gonna happen. Like he knows he's
it was like that. Like the anticipation of the sure to come would definitely mess with me.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like dying from skydiving is probably less painful than drowning.
I don't know. In the movie, he says like drowning felt like going home, or he talks about like a sailor like saying like, yeah, it just felt like I was going home after a while. But I have no idea. I haven't read much about people drowning. I would personally think drowning and like being suffocated or like burning to death would be the worst ways to go. How does like this movie compare with like real magic? For example, like the birds, like did they ever do that back in the day or no?
Okay, so that's like an interesting thing too. I think most of the magic in the movie is pretty inaccurate, and it's really funny too because I remember Christian Bale was trying to do some tricks that a lot of the magic websites that I had followed, I think, sold their products to do that kind of trick. Mm-hmm. And then I think he went on public television to like demonstrate the magic he was doing, but he wasn't very good at it.
To explain the birds, sorry, for people I guess who haven't seen, basically what happens is at some point in the movie, it's when Freddie and Sarah, or Borden and Sarah, first meet. She has her little nephew there, and they'll have like this birdhouse, and they'll make the bird disappear, but basically he like claps it down, and it kills the bird, right? It goes into like a little hidden compartment, killing the bird, but then he brings it out on the... So I guess another thing that I should explain is the 3 acts. First, it's like the pledge.
Oh, yeah.
The pledge, the magician shows you something ordinary. So in this act, he would just show you like an ordinary bird. The turn, he takes the ordinary something and makes it into something extraordinary. So he takes the bird and he makes it disappear. And then the final act is called the prestige. That's like the big twist. So he basically, the prestige is he brings the bird back. And the trick is really cruel, you see, at the end, because basically what they're doing is they're killing the bird each time and like having a little baby brother bird like come out, like that looked perfectly the same. So you were saying like they never did that?
Oh yeah. Well, I just wanted to like first mention that was like such a great example of foreshadowing, because when they showed the trick and then to the little kid, the kid starts crying, and then you know, he's like, I think, was it the mom was saying, "Oh no, look, he's fine." He's, but
and then
the kid is crying because the kid is asking, "But where's his brother?" Which I think in the moment made no sense to me.
No, like, I kind of like, I don't think I was like understanding what the kid was asking. But then
that line just flew over my head the first time I heard it. But then, like in the context of knowing about the twin brothers, like it's like. The twist was very well set up from the beginning, and actually in the beginning shot, it tells you everything. It tells, it shows all the hats on the ground, and then it shows you all the birds. Yeah,
which is something you'll never notice on your first like run through. Is like you're like, oh, what are all these hats? But
it's and then it shows the title, The Prestige. So in some ways, the movie showed you the twist from the very beginning, and it's like it was hiding in plain sight. You just didn't know that was what you were supposed to look for.
Yeah, literally in plain sight the entire time. And I think Christopher Nolan did like such an impeccable job at leaving you clues, so you can come back and watch it a second time, and actually the movie changes drastically. And I think that's what transforms a movie from just being like a decent movie into like a great movie, to where like there's rewatchability and you can go and have a new experience every single time you watch it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what makes a lot of the classics so great. Fight Club, Pulp Fiction. I feel like movies that have like they're kind of more in the postmodern style, where it's not told chronologically, linearly, and from different perspectives. Like those movies are always really fun to rewatch because I feel like you get something new every time you.
I would agree with you.
It.
The only other movie that I can think about that like was told in a non-chronological order that didn't really make sense was Pulp Fiction. Have you ever seen Pulp Fiction?
Yeah. That's like the example of like people make you study that in film school for like an example of like a postmodern film. Yeah, it's like literally it makes no sense, right? Because you don't know the timeline, you don't know like whose perspective is who. But I think as you watch it more, you kind of piece together what is supposed to be happening.
Yeah,
like, you definitely can't just watch it once and be like, that was an experience.
I guess like the issue with like Pulp Fiction was I just didn't understand why it was out of like chronological order. It didn't seem like there was for me like any rhyme or reason for it.
I think it was supposed to showcase just like the chaos of like and like the absurdity of the situation, right? And there's a lot of animes do that too as well. Like I don't know if you've seen. Oh, this is the wrong podcast. Right? This is the.
Hey, I was thinking that we could even do like an anime movie or something, like the Cowboy Bebop movie or something eventually.
Cowboy Bebop. But yeah, there's like another one called Bakano, which is one of my favorite
I've heard about
series
it, yeah.
as well. Which does the same thing because it means noise in Italian, and each episode it's told from a different person's perspective, but like in different chronologies. So it's like it's their perspective, but sometimes it's like in the past, sometimes in the future, sometimes in the present. And nothing makes sense until like the last few episodes when you finally figure out like, oh, this is what's happening.
Interesting.
So yeah, so I'm a big fan of those, but they're definitely not very. It's not rewarding, or it's not immediately rewarding. Like it does take a few watches and some deep analysis of like what's going on.
Yeah, like deep processing of it.
Yeah, to kind of piece together what's happening. I think Prestige is not at that level, not in a bad way. I think Nolan is really good at bringing kind of more high-level concepts to an accessible, like presenting it in an accessible way. Whereas like I feel like the Prestige isn't super deep. It's not like an art film, but it definitely tackles a lot of issues that definitely like makes you think about it later, right? Because I think the movie itself is just the Pledge, the Turn, and the Prestige, but the Pledge is sort of the plot, right? It's just like this is what happens in the story, and then it's like this is like a movie, and then the Turn is the twist.
The twist in the movie,
the twist, and then the Prestige is okay. Well, the Turn is you make it something extraordinary, right? And I think like you would think the twist should be the Prestige, but I think that twist is actually the Turn. Where it's like this is a normal movie, and then you find out there's this whole another level of layering with like the twins and the Tesla cloning stuff. Like this is like some crazy stuff, and then the Prestige is actually like kind of like what the movie is really about, right? It's like I think the way I would phrase it is like what are the lengths someone will go through in order to kind of how far will you go to ensure your legacy, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
to like get the spotlight and like make yourself like well known.
Yeah, it's like what at what cost is it?
Is it worth it for you? I had a question about that. So Angier has a big issue with like giving up the spotlight, and eventually it turns into him literally cloning himself to like have like the moment where he can like bask in the glory of like the crowd and applaud. Is it a big issue for magicians if you use like a double or something? Like, the giving up the spotlight? Is that ever like a huge issue that magicians have to like come to?
Okay, so this is another interesting thing, and I think they touch upon it a little bit with double, right? They were saying how they had to pay off the double, like they had to give him a lot of money so that he wouldn't be tempted to just reveal that he was the double for it, right? And then as like he was getting more and more alcohol, like he was drinking more and more alcohol, it became like the tension became very apparent that this guy was probably going to do something stupid.
Yeah, I think the main reason that he did something stupid was because Borden like went up to him and was like, "Man, I would never do a trick with the double because once they like figure out that they have like all the power, like they can do whatever they want."
Yeah, and I think that's actually the big difference between the Bordens and Angier, right? Mm-hmm. I think in terms of their character arc, they basically ended up becoming the same person, right? They sacrificed their family, their personal relationships in order to try and raise their art to the highest possible level, and at whatever cost, right? Sabotaging, like sabotaging each other, deception, lies, illusions. But I think the difference at the end is Angier's wanted the spotlight to himself, and I think the Bordens were content sharing it.
They were for sure happy sharing it. Yeah, I think Angier wanted some of the. I think if Angier could have shared the spotlight, I think he would have actually been okay, because even in the movie he asks, is there like a way to make it so Root, which is the body double, can like start the trick and then I'll be the one coming up, and Cutter quickly dismisses it. No, like the best part about the trick is the setup. Nobody really cares about the trick if it happens if the setup is garbage, which was which was Borden's main issue for his tricks, is that he couldn't really do the showmanship of the trick as well as Angier ever could.
Yeah, which makes them like really good rivals, right? They kind of excel. They excel at the things that the other person is not, right? I think Borden was more technical, like he was better at like the illusions and the technique, but Angier's was a better showman, and thus he was able to be more commercially successful. Which is why it's really ironic that in order for his act to be successful, he had to kind of give up the spotlight in order to
have it happen.
In order to perform the best possible effect.
Speaking of technique and like just amazing like hands, Ricky Jay was really good, and he's like most well known for his cups and ball routine. I'm gonna show actually everybody a clip of that if they're interested. Well, I guess
I think Ricky Jay's presentational style is the closest to like how they did in the movie.
Okay, I'm gonna
You'll see.
show him this cup and balls trick. It's like 7 minutes long. So here you guys go.
You know, until Johann Nepomuk Hofzinser called playing cards the poetry of magic. A conjurer's skill was determined entirely on his ability to perform one effect. That was called the cups and balls.
Oh, wait, there's no sound, really?
Many people will tell you it's the oldest effect in the history of magic.
You're good.
And on the tombs of the king Beni Hassan of ancient Egypt, there are representations of Nile magicians doing the cups and balls. I'm not one of those people. I will tell you the game was known to the Greeks and Rome.
All right, hold on. Sorry, guys, I'm scuffed. 1 sec. I gotta copy this over. I gotta put Albert's camera there. I forgot to do this earlier.
Hello.
Yeah, literally.
There I am.
Sorry. There you go.
There's me.
There we go, everybody. Now we got it.
Romans that Seneca wrote about it.
That was
the earliest iconography in our venerable art, the famous planetary drawings of Ulm in the 15th century do show cups and balls conjurers. The game has been played continuously for hundreds, if not thousands of years. With your kind permission, I'd like to end my performance this evening by showing you my version of this classic, which I call the history lesson. In 1584, Reginald Scott wrote the first practical treatise on conjuring in the English language. And in it, he spoke about putting a ball under a common object, like a candlestick. He also said one might use a salt cellar, a bowl, or even a cup, and if the conjurer was clever, he could make the ball vanish and appear almost at will. Only a short time later, the game was played with bowls of china, played in the Orient, anthropologists love the concept of independent invention.
If you ever want me to pause and you want to
Western
talk
Europe,
about
it was
something,
played-
just feel free to say anything, and then I'll...
I haven't seen this in a while, so
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it.
With cups of cheap metal like tin, which on occasion have the strange ability to seem penetrable. This evening I'm going to use cups of spun copper. Personal favorites for a reason I will not reveal. One of the things I love about this game is it independently exists in the genre of the gambler as well as the magician. This is a scene you may remember as the old three-shell game. On the English race course, it was called thimble rigging. In the language of the hustler, it might be known as the hinks, the dinks, the blocks, or the nuts. The idea that you'd either put a ball or pretend to put a ball under one of the cups, but the ball would appear where it was least likely. Once again, if I place the ball over here and I move this, moving these cups, you might think the ball was here, but it jumps to over here. One last time. This is why people have been known to lose houses and even clothing playing this little game. One last time, if I place the ball here and move that to here, the ball now jumps as well. Now, a conjurer would do this in a slightly different fashion. The conjurer would take the object, put it in his hand, make it vanish using a magic wand. Conjurers also cheat. They use many of these. Actually, the game was traditionally played with 3 cups and 3 balls. I'm going to show you an actual sequence of events from a 17th century bestseller called Hocus Pocus Jr. The idea here that I will cover the center ball with a cup and place one on top. Then I'll actually cover this and try to make the ball penetrate solid through solid, joining its mate below. Now that you know the sequence, why don't you follow it again? This time a ball penetrating through 2 solid copper cups. This method, a personal favorite of Matthew Buchinger, the little man of Nuremberg. He was only 28 inches tall. The cups obscured almost his entire body. Look, that's enough for 3 balls to appear below. Matthew Buchinger had no arms or legs, but he did have 14 children. The most famous man to ever play the game, the Italian Bartolomeo Bosco. Bosco appeared in the beginning of the 19th century. He cut an unusual figure on stage. He wore a black satin waistcoat, black velvet trousers. He made sure his sleeves were carefully rolled up. He took out his magic wand and polished the tip. A wand which he said was made of a strange amalgam of metals known only to himself and Erasmus of Rotterdam. Above his table was a brass bell. He hit the bell and said the words, Spiritae mihi in infernali obedite, infernal spirits obey my command. Bosco's sequence with the cups and the balls. Vade. Jubio. Celerator. 3 gone, and yet 3 return. Bosco had only one contemporary rival, the slightly older Frenchman named Conus, who in 1795 announced that he would make his wife, who was 5'7", appear under one of the cups. Practice though I have been unable even to get married. Wouldn't even touch these with his hand. Actually, he said the only reason a magician used 3 was to confuse you. So he took 1 ball and placed that aside in his pocket. He took the 2nd ball and also placed that away. It still left 1 ball over here, but it didn't explain how this ball came back. Conus explained it. He said the magician did a feint. He only pretended to take the ball. Actually, what he did was to pretend, put his hand back, and then insinuate the ball under the cup. Conus said, I do no such thing. When I place the ball in my pocket, it really stays there. How could it come back, and indeed where? Perhaps back to the 16th century. Many of you may prefer the game the way it was played in the Orient, with 2 balls and 2 balls. Or you might prefer the European version with 3 cups and 3 balls. And if you have been paying attention, you know there would be 1 ball under the center cup, but now there are 3. And that's the way the game was played for another 120 years. until it was revolutionized once again by Max Malini, the man I spoke of earlier. Malini would take 3 glasses and wrap them in newspaper. He would take a cork from a wine bottle and cut it into 3 sections. He would take the 3 sections of cork and place them in his pocket. Then, fashioning an impromptu wand out of a celery stalk or an asparagus spear, he would tap the glasses and say, "Spiritai mihi in finale obedite," or anything else that came to mind. And that's the mystery of the cups.
Yeah, I'm actually not. I can see some moves now because I've watched a lot of like magic
Penn and Teller?
videos. Yeah, I've watched a lot. So I can see like how he's like manipulating the balls, but I just totally missed him putting the literal huge pieces of fruit inside the cups.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just really well choreographed, where the loads and the ditches like happen when you, like, in moments where you're kind of like in magic. There's like, believe it or not, there's actually magic theory books and teachers teaching you about magic theory and principles, and a lot of it is kind of working on the offbeat, where it's like you do like when people are burning your hands the most, that's when you don't do the tricks. It's usually like when there's like some sort of gag or some sort of joke and people are laughing or they think the trick is over, is when you prepare the next part.
Yeah, comedy and magic seem to be a thing. Like they're like a pair, because it gives you time to do things, right? If you're telling a joke and then everybody's laughing, you have a split second where you can sneak something in, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so for him, it's like when he's showing stuff underneath the balls, or I mean underneath the cups, and there's something there, or he's showing the other stuff, like he's already preloading the next step. It never happens when you think it's going to happen. And that's kind of why like a lot of these tricks, like cups and balls, is a classic, because it's something that's been refined for so many, like hundreds and hundreds of years. And the techniques have only been refined further as, I guess, literacy, like I guess the magic literacy of the audience has been going up. Because I think now people are more familiar with general principles in magic, it's like key card principles, where it's like, oh, you look at the bottom card, you remember it, and someone puts a card back. Like people know that. And people know that you can fake shuffle. People know that you can do a double lift. People know a lot more things than they used to. I feel like before I could just show them anything and then they'd be amazed. But now it's like, oh, I saw that on Penn and Teller, or I saw this reveal like on a Facebook video, or whatever.
Everybody kind of wants to see like the next like new thing. Not what they just saw on Penn and Teller last week, because people, I think, can go do their research and pretty much find out how a lot of tricks are done. Even if you go to the YouTube comments on any of the Penn and Teller ones, there's somebody in there like telling you exactly how it's done.
Yep. And so I think it just makes, and so you can go 2 ways with it. One is you can either done, and then you just do something so freaking difficult that people just could never do it, right? It's like if the secret is just as impressive as the trick itself, I think people will be just as impressed, right? It's like that's why I love coin magic. When you see someone do coin magic and you see how they do it, it's the same thing.
Coin magic is one of my favorite, like just making a coin disappear or just like manipulating it. It's so technically challenging that it's just impressive no matter what.
I feel like doing coin tricks is like playing Terran. And card tricks are more like playing Protoss, where it's like you can get a lot out of not as much.
Oh,
it's
for
like,
sure.
Yeah, like you can do a self-working card trick that can really be entertaining and really interesting. Whereas coin magic is you could practice a long time to do a very simple trick, and someone sees how you do it once, and then it's like, well, I guess I got to be practicing for 10 more years.
There went my 10 years on that one trick. Yeah. How did you feel that Hugh Jackman did as his role as like Robert Angier? I thought he did amazingly. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think everyone did really amazing, and like it was a star-studded cast, right? This is
for sure. Like Michael Caine is one of my favorite actors, and I think he always plays his roles.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because I'm like, man, am I watching Batman?
Yeah, because he kind of does like the same thing, where he's like the like engineer behind everything.
Yeah,
like the mind.
Batman, except Christian Bale this time is Alfred, and not Michael Caine, which is funny to me.
How did you like Christian Bale? Just another great performance by him.
Yeah, I think so. I think for him it's interesting, right? Because his acting has to be more nuanced because he has to be
two characters.
He
kind of.
he has to be two characters as one, but not be so obvious that they're like different people in his acting.
True. Yeah. He has to pretty much play two different characters, but he has to play them to where they're kind of the same character, but he can't give anything away, like intentionally. Yeah, that's really hard.
He's an actor playing a singular person who is technically someone else, or technically is a brother playing that person. So it's like several layers. It's almost like what was that one guy? There was like another example of this where I thought I think Westworld was also like a really cool example of like people like, I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's like they have to pretend to be robots that are pretending to be people,
humans. Yeah.
Right. And then be able to distinguish like how like a robot becomes a human, like in their acting. And there's a lot of like physicality to that as well.
For sure. That's like really physical acting. And then some of the robots don't even know that they're robots. Or I guess none of the robots technically know that they're robots. Yeah. And then they kind of figure it out at some point.
Yeah. And I also think like the secret genius behind a lot of the Nolan movies, Christopher Nolan, but his brother Jonathan Nolan. Because Jonathan Nolan writes.
He has a writing credit in like everything, right?
Yeah. And he wrote Memento, I think with his brother, but I think he did most of the writing. And then he also did The Prestige, Inception. And he wrote the first like the first season of Westworld, or was like one of the lead writers on that.
The first season of Westworld, I think, was really, really, really carried by Anthony Hopkins. I didn't like the second season, but I don't know if that's just Anthony wasn't there.
I didn't like the second season either, but I thought the first seasons of like TV like ever.
What did you say? Sorry, your mic cut
out. I thought the first season of Westworld was one of the best seasons of like
TV,
on-air TV, like in the last like 5 to 10 like. Maybe like last decade, but then the second season just kind of ruined it for me. So now like my overall impression of Westworld has kind of gone down.
I tried to watch the second season and I got like 5 or 6 episodes in and I felt like nothing had happened the entire time. And I'm like, why am I still watching this? And then people in chat would be like, well, wait, just keep watching. It gets better. And I'm like, if you don't have me in the first like 5 episodes, I'm dipping out. Like I can't just keep watching crappy television. But the first season of Westworld, I completely agree with you. And Anthony Hopkins is like a super talented guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first season like was also like Prestige to me, where it's a lot of things didn't make any sense, but then when you rewatch it with the knowledge that you have from watching the finale, everything takes on a whole different meaning. Like, there's so many little details and little lines that hint at what's going on. What is to come. Yeah.
I think that's like a actually really smart observation that these kind of two are very similar, where if you go rewatch Westworld season 1, you can kind of like see the hints that they give you.
Like when I watched Westworld, I immediately was like, it's like, did one of the Nolan, like did Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan have a hand in this? Because I've like this feels very similar stylistically.
Yeah, and you said you did write it, yeah.
Yeah, and then okay, this makes sense.
Speaking of actors again, David Bowie played Nikola Tesla, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
One of Nikola Tesla's favorite quotes that you shared with me was, "Any technology super advanced is indistinguishable from magic." How do you?
Any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. Like that's like kind of that quote is what I want my life to be. You know, I think because I love technology and I love anything that kind of tries to imagine what the future is going to look like. And I actually do combine a lot of technology with my magic as well. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a lot of tech stuff that actually exists in the magic world to make things happen. It's almost like practical effects in some ways. You know, back in the day, like in the Spielbergian days, VFX wasn't so good back then, so they would have to create stuff in order to make it happen on screen. I kind of miss those days. I think Mad Max,
live action things.
Yeah. I think Mad Max was like one of the more recent movies that still kind of embraced the practicals.
That did all practical effects. Yeah.
Not all, but a lot.
Yeah.
Like most of it was done for real, and they had some scenes where they had like giant VFX like green screens, but they were still in the desert.
I don't personally hate CGI. I know I'll see a lot of times in chat, like, people are, like, just shitting on CGI all the time and, like, oh my god, like, I hate it. I don't hate CGI. I do like practical effects, and I think it's cool when you can do a movie with mostly practical effects. It's definitely way harder than it is to just CGI something. But I think CGI has definitely helped out with movie making in general.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you couldn't do any of the Marvel movies if they were
No,
if they were
yeah.
done with if they were only done with practical effects. But yeah, so I think a lot of magic nowadays requires some degree of technology as well. It's just stuff that you would never see. It's like it's blended like really well with the sleight of hand and the kind of whole notion of magic being this like super dexterous thing. And so if you combine both, it's just really hard to backtrack.
Some of the so yeah, is magic leaning more towards using like actual like technology like phones and stuff like that, or
Oh, when I mean technology, it's not like phones per se. It's not like it's not necessarily that magic is like magic. The meta for magic is shifting towards doing tricks with like with technology, like literal technology,
yeah,
like phones, computers, the internet. A lot of it is like there are technology stuff that's going on behind the scenes that you'll never see.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Yeah.
He's about to get blackballed from the magic.
Okay. Let me think of an example of something that's like super crazy.
Sure, you can think of an example, and I'll just give him a I'll just
okay. There's just one that's like really insane, but I think David Copperfield uses it in his show right now, so I don't think I can tell people how that one's done. But no, there's like some stuff where it's like you have like invisible thread, but it's not just invisible thread that's like attached to your body. There's like invisible threads that's attached to like programmed reels that are like synced to some sort of software. So then you can like simulate. It's almost like an animatronic, but you can animate an object that looks like it's floating or it's moving around more realistically than you could by like trying to
doing it with your hands,
puppet it.
That's okay. So something like that. That seems really cool, and I didn't even know that existed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's so much like weird stuff that exists in the magic world, and that magic props can be really expensive because it's such a niche field that can't be advertised too well. Otherwise, people wouldn't know how it's done, right? It's like you're paying a lot of money to have something that no one else can do, and that the secret is really closely guarded. Yeah,
and if everybody knows how, like nobody cares about a trick if you pretty much know how it's done. At least in the most part, I'd say.
Yeah. But yeah, magic is a weird industry.
It's been around forever, so I would assume it's gonna keep staying around.
And IP behind it is really difficult too. It's like, how do you protect your creations when like it's not publicly known that you've created something, right? Like you'll see this all the time, and I don't even know how I should go about this. But have you seen Instagram magicians or Facebook magicians or like that kind of thing where it's like the super meme style videos where it's square video and then you have a little text like you wouldn't believe what blah blah blah. And so a lot of what they're doing in those tricks, I mean in those videos are tricks that are commercially sold in the magic market, but that doesn't necessarily mean you get performance rights. So like for the really like high end tricks, you have to buy the TV performance rights separately from the trick itself. Like you're allowed to perform it for people, obviously, and
got it. So in order to perform it,
I think you can stream it as well. But once you like are making a lot of money from the video itself, then you get this really great area with involving intellectual property. But because it's the kind of thing where I don't think there's a lot of money in,
you can't really patent it.
Sue someone. You could sue someone for it, right?
Yeah.
But
Tammy.
Dogs are barking. So you could sue someone for it, but it's like they're not going to have the money to like make it like a worthwhile case. I think only recently, like I remember like Penn and Teller, Teller had this trick called the shadow trick. Mm-hmm. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen
it. It's the one where he has a rose in the background, and it's set up against like a canvas, a white canvas, and there's a straight beam of light that shines on the rose, and when he stabs the shadow of the rose, it causes the petals to fall off the actual rose. It's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
It's like 2 minutes. You want to show it on stream?
Yeah, just show it. Okay, it's so good. It's so good.
Let me see if I can set this up.
I use Grammarly pretty much every time I type on my
Freaking ads, boys.
details are important. Small.
Trick performed by talent on his own that has never been seen on television until now. Ladies and gentlemen,
Oh, nice.
Shadows.
This is on Penn Teller. Right.
That's actually a really cool trick.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, so like that, like that's what I think magic should look like, but it's really hard to do it, or it's hard to come up with a method to do something like that.
Even then, like just coming up with that idea, like I'm gonna take a knife and I'm gonna stab a piece of paper behind it and make it look super beautiful. That's such a crazy concept that I would have never thought of.
Yeah, and wait, why did I bring this up? Oh yeah, so he got, I think someone tried to recreate and sell his trick, and then because that trick was so well documented that it was like his creation, I think they were able to go to court for it.
Hash it out.
And hash it out.
It seems like suing somebody would be almost impossible because your goal as a magician is to keep the trick as well guarded as possible, and then when somebody like steals it from you, you don't have like intellectual property showing like a trademark, like hey, here's how the trick is done, like because then everybody could figure it out like immediately if they wanted to. So it seems insanely hard.
Yeah, so that's why like I'm at the point where it's like if I want to show, like, do I need to go and like consult the original creators of the trick in order to be able to show it? I think for streaming it's a little bit different because it's not likely that someone's going to like repost. I mean, people repost my videos all the time, but it's not going to get as much traction as like, you know, like a viral video
until it becomes viral.
until it becomes viral,
and then you have an issue, which is which is weird.
Yeah, and which is why when I teach tricks, I'm very careful to not teach tricks that I know are currently marketed tricks that could get me in trouble, right? Because I'm taking away money from someone who's making their livelihood off of
using it right now,
off of creating the tricks and teaching them. So that's why people always like teach more tricks, and it's always really difficult for me to come up with new tricks that I know like I wouldn't get in trouble for teaching and that wouldn't personally affect like people figuring out what I'm doing as well, right? It's like a fine line where it's like I want to give them something, but not so much that then they know how I do everything.
Do you think Penn and Teller does it well, where they'll let people perform a trick, and then their goal is to like give them enough information to like let them know that they know how they did the trick, but also I think that they kind of give enough information for the audience if they really want to. they can look it up and like figure out themselves how to perform the trick. Like if you're a young
Yeah.
magician or something like that. Do you think that's a cool way and like a nice way of doing it?
I think so. I think so. I think for Penn and Teller, I think ultimately the goal of the show is not a competition. It's more of a way to showcase magic talent that otherwise wouldn't have a platform to be showcased.
It's like yeah, and I think from my perspective as like an outside source, it's always seemed like magicians are super welcoming and willing to, they want to share their craft, like they're performers, and they want people to love it and they want people to enjoy magic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree.
I would say so to some degree. It's like, I think magicians are generally pretty comfortable sharing like how things are done to other people who are passionate about the art and about seriously learning. I think the problem that I've had in the past is someone like, I want to get into magic, and then I like take them under my wing, and then they find out that it's difficult and it takes a lot of practice, and then after a few weeks of trying it, they just quit. And then I just feel like, well, I just told them how to do all this stuff, and now they're never going to use it again. Yeah, it sucks.
I think a lot of people don't realize that magic literally requires you to sometimes practice in your room for like 10 hours a day for like 6 years to like master a trick. Like, yeah. Have you created it? Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's like the joke is a magician will look at themselves in front of their mirror more than their girlfriend if they can ever get one. And because mirror practice is so important, you need to be able to check your angles all the time when you're doing moves, right? Certain moves only look good from certain perspectives.
Yeah.
Like that one, or it's just really, really difficult. And even when you can do it in front of the mirror, you still have to incorporate the human aspect of it. And there's some tricks literally you can't practice unless you have people. For example, hypnosis is really, really, really hard to practice on your own because you can't hypnotize yourself.
Or it's true that you can't hypnotize anybody who doesn't want to like be hypnotized, right? Like hypnosis is pretty much they're playing along in a way.
Yeah, so the way that I view hypnosis is basically a combination of suggestion and peer pressure, where you want people who genuinely want to be hypnotized, and you want people who, so it's a combination of both. You want someone who wants to be hypnotized, and another thing is like when they realize it's working the way that their brain conceives of hypnotists to look like, because like when you see hypnotism in popular media, that's like not really how hypnotism goes down. Like you don't lose control of yourself. It's more like you're in this really relaxed state. It's almost like meditating, and then they're just telling you to do something, and it's something absurd, but because you're under like a hypnosis or a trance, like quote unquote trance, you're kind of not held accountable for anything you do while you're under hypnosis. And then you have generally like 100 to thousands of people watching you be hypnotized. And it's more embarrassing, I think, to admit that the hypnosis didn't work on you, if you're someone who believes in it, than it is for the magician to look like they failed, or the hypnotist to fail. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like hypnosis is a real thing. It's used in psychology. Yeah. It's literally the power of suggestion.
Yeah, and especially when you see like everyone else on the stage doing like being hypnotized, then you suddenly feel like you're the odd one out, and you'd rather play along and play to what you're being suggested than feel like you're the person that like is like messing up this experience for everyone else in the audience.
Hypnotism is interesting. I think a lot of magic is really cool until people start claiming that they have like these real like psychic abilities or whatever. Like Uri Geller, right? Yeah. All of his stuff is really interesting, and if you guys ever want, you can go look him up. And Randy, what's his last name?
Oh, is he the guy? It's like it starts with the D. Randy Dawkins. Randy. He's the guy who has like a.
He's got like the $1 million challenge for like psychics to like prove it. Yeah.
Randy. Let me see. James Randy. I got
James Randy. Yeah, the Amazing Randy. That was what it was. Yeah, that guy is super amazing. Watch all of his stuff. Do you have anything else to add about the Prestige?
Yeah, let's loop it back around.
Let's loop it back.
So what I was saying is, the pledge, the turn, and the prestige are stuff that they made up specifically for the movie. Like that, those terminologies don't really exist in the magic world, and I think they just wanted to set that up just so that there's like a more structure to the whole story. And you find out later that the whole movie is basically the trick act that they set up, right? Like the whole movie itself is
literally the pledge to turn
and
the prestige. Yeah.
And which is I think just general storytelling, right? It's like you have your exposition and you have your oh god, it's been so long since I studied.
Oh man, what is it called?
Literature.
Like the middle?
Like is it denouement?
I think that word works. Yeah, the climax, and then like denouement also works. Yeah. And then
that's sort of it's like a very, very loose.
It's kind of a loose that
but applied to a magic trick. But I mean, magic tricks are basically just stories if you think about it, right? It's like you present something, this is the premise, and then you do something, and you have your audience engage in some way, and then you do something that subverts their expectations. That's all that magic. That's all that magic is. Well, not all that is, but it's like good magic is a story, right? And it's something that challenges a belief that you have. Whether it could be something as simple as like that can't possibly happen, this is physically impossible, to like some really great storytelling stuff.
We can even see like that good magic is storytelling, to like with the Randy video, or not the Randy, the
Ricky J
video. Yeah. He has this whole story where he tells you the background of the cup and balls. He has different types of the cups that they used. Amazing storytelling. It combined with the trick makes true magic, like extraordinary magic, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the whole movie itself, and the movie is really not about magic, and I think the magic is sort of not irrelevant, but it's just the medium
storytelling technique, like the medium for it. Yeah.
And you see this a lot in just movies in general, or even like, I hate to keep bringing this up, but like in animes, right? It's like usually some ridiculous premise, or it's like they take like sports animes where they take something that would normally seem not that interesting to make into a movie, and they make it really interesting because the theme or the premise is just like a backdrop for the actual story and the characters to like kind of like develop and like really present themselves in a clear way. And the movie is more about art and making art rather than being about magicians trying to fool each other.
Yeah, it seems like you can pretty much take this movie and you could probably exchange it for like painting or something, and make it more about like the craft of like creating art rather than creating
or
magic,
filmmaking,
or
right?
Yeah. Do you want to give it a rating? Should we like at the end of our podcast like give every movie
out of 10?
Out of 10 with like decimals. So like mine would be, I think I'll give this like an 8.6.
Yeah, I would. This is like one of my favorite movies, and I admit flaws. I think it can get kind of over dramatic at times, and the whole Tesla stuff is, I think, beating it a little bit over the head in terms of like absurdity. And I think Nolan films can sometimes be overly pedantic. I think this one is like right on the line. I don't think it's too pedantic, but like when you get to Interstellar and it's like power of love and
I would love
stuff.
to talk about Interstellar like in the future. We have our next like 2 ones picked out, but like I think I would rip Interstellar a new one near the ending part.
I actually hate Interstellar so much.
Yeah, I like the movie a lot until the ending, and then I fucking hate the movie because it's just so dumb.
It's like the reverse Up.
Yeah,
where the intro is so good that I think it one of the best Pixar films.
Oh, sorry, your mic cut out.
Oh, I'm saying it's like the reverse Up, where the intro of Up is so powerful that it kind of colors people's perception of the entire movie, and they think it's like one of the best Pixar films of all time, when I think the first 10 minutes are probably like it's probably the best of any Pixar film, but the rest of it is maybe like a like a 70 to 80%.
The first 10 minutes are that's going through. Is that going through his life? I don't remember the beginning of Up.
Yeah, it goes through his life and how he meets his wife.
Yeah,
and then,
that's so sick. That's so yeah.
Yeah, and then they keep talking about like going on all these adventures. By the time they get a house and stuff, she becomes too old to like go out anymore.
Or they
and
like have a kid and they run out of money. Like there's always something in life that like stop them. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the very end she dies and she leaves him a note or something. If I remember this correctly.
Yeah.
And the note says like it's like don't worry, it's like life or being with you is always an adventure, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, fuck, you know, it hits you in the field. Guys, this is spoilers. This is the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes of the movie, guys. It's all right. You'll live. Oh man, we should watch a Pixar movie in the future.
Yes, I'm down. Like, what's your favorite Pixar film?
I think it's Coco. Honestly.
Wait, that's mine too.
Yeah,
like
Coco. I didn't think I'd go into it liking it, and then I watched it, and I was like, oh fuck, like this is a fucking masterpiece. It's so sick.
Yeah. No, I did the Disney Pixar bracket thing. Did you?
I haven't seen this.
Where it has like, no. So basically, it's like a tournament bracket where it's different Disney and Pixar movies that are going up against each other.
Yeah.
And then you pick like which one would win, and then you go into the middle. And so Coco ended up winning my thing, and my chat gave me so much shit.
Nah, they shouldn't get shit at all because that movie was so good.
And they're like recency bias. But in my opinion, I think like the whole way through, I think it was a really solid film.
Yeah, when I watched Coco, I never was like, oh, this like I don't really like this part. The whole way through is a solid film, and then it has a cool little turn that you sometimes don't see or whatever. Yeah. It's just a solid film with solid music and it hits you right in the feels.
Yeah, right in the Coco.
Right in the.
Yeah, so I think to go back to the rating, I think Prestige is like I would say like an 8.5 for me. It's like the kind of thing where it's my favorite movie, but even though I know it's not like the best movie, I just think overall it's a really like tightly written story with great visuals, great acting, great music, great cinematics, and I love magic. So
the next movie that we're watching,
super biased.
I agree with you. I think I can have like a favorite movie, and I know it's not like the best movie. Like some movies I would give like a 9.7 or something, and it's not my favorite movie, but I know that it's like a really good movie. The next movie that we're gonna watch, and I'll show the trailer for, is called Mr. Nobody. Should I just show them the trailer now? And then
yeah, I should show them the trailer.
Okay. Do you want to show them the trailer and then we can talk a little bit, or do you just want to like do our shoutouts now, show them the trailer, and end it there?
Let's show the trailer, and then we'll like do
our shout.
Like a quick brief of it, and then we'll do our shout.
Okay, cool. Let me pull that up.
This page isn't available.
Yeah, I got it. There we are.
Another
ad, everybody.
That Amazon hack that is all over the internet. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called
nothing. All right. Here's the trailer for Mr. Nobody.
Can you tell me how old you are? Oh, I'm 34. I was born February 9th, 1975. Who are you? I'm Mr. Nobody, a man who doesn't exist. We don't know who Mr. Nobody is. Neither does he. Our patient's memories are confused.
So, Nemo, have you made up your mind? Do you want to come with me, or do you want to stay with your father? We cannot go back. That's why it's hard to choose.
Nemo!
You have to make the right choice. As long as you don't choose, everything remains possible.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Did you stay with your father or go with your mother?
Remember.
Hello, Nemo. I want you.
I want you too.
For as much as Anna and Nemo have consented together in holy wedlock, for as much as Elise and Nemo,
Jean and Nemo have joined themselves to each other.
Everything that you say is contradictory. Of all those lives, which one is the right one?
Do you love me?
I couldn't live without you.
You're the first and last person I'll ever love.
afraid of death. I'm afraid I haven't been alive enough.
Yeah, so that's the trailer for Mr. Nobody. This movie has, in my opinion, one of the best soundtracks I've ever listened to. One of the best scores. It was actually what I was playing at the start of before we started our podcast.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I was like, what is this music on? It sounds really, really, really familiar.
Yeah, I was thinking of kind of doing that at like the start of our podcast. We'll play like the music or like the little score of like the next movie.
Of the next movie.
Yeah,
wow, that's
I think kind of cute. This score
not
I tried to
not the
listen
score
to.
from the current movie.
Not the score from the current movie. This one I listened to, and I don't know. I just didn't hear any like crazy stuff from the score, I guess. But it was very like
it's more
background.
atmospheric.
Yeah, atmospheric, which tied into the movie perfectly. Yeah, this is honestly my favorite movie. It's very, very artsy. It's a very artsy film. So it's going to be one or two things. You guys are going to either love it or you're going to hate it. And I would actually suggest you probably watch it twice, because this movie is actually way more confusing than The Prestige. I think it took me like 3 watches for me to like fucking learn to love this movie. So you said you watched it once?
Yes, I watched it once, and then I was pretty
It's so
confused.
confused.
So.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, like I understood pretty quickly like what was going on, but then like kind of understanding the different. Well, I don't know. Okay, I don't want to spoil stuff, but you know, just like piecing together all the different chronologies and all the different timeline stuff or parallel timelines stuff. I don't know. It's I'm gonna have to map it out when we just.
I'm gonna definitely take some very like some real notes now that finals are over. I can almost over. I got one more on Friday, but I can definitely like do some real notes on this one. Did you have anything that you wanted to add? Any last minute?
Before like giving information on the next one.
Either that or ending with like the Prestige stuff, whatever you want to do.
So I think we're switching off, right? For
yep,
the podcast?
you'll have the podcast next time. Yeah, the podcast next week on Tuesday will be on Albert's stream, Slightly Musical. Make sure to follow him on Twitter, the Albert Chang.
Yeah, and yeah, it's going to be same time, same place.
Same time, different place.
Same time, different place.
It'll look the same though.
It'll look the same.
There is a way that we watch movies together. Basically, what I do is I purchase the movie myself on YouTube, and then people will watch it on a place called strims.gg on every Sunday. So Fancy Sloth on Sunday will be streaming the movie. Make sure you guys purchase it legally like I do, literally. So you can watch it with us on Sunday nights on Strims, STR, strims.gg. Yeah. So
Cool.
Thanks for coming out. I know it was a little scuffed. Hopefully we should have everything fixed next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else, Albert, or we just want to wave to him goodbye?
I guess we could just say goodbye.
All right.
Are you streaming later today?
I'm probably just gonna host you.
Okay. Well, I'm not streaming.
You're not about to stream?
I'm not. No, not until I left my credit card at a film store when I was buying stuff for a shoot.
I actually lost my credit card last week, so.
Wow.
Hopefully that comes in tomorrow.
Never lucky.
Never lucky for us. I will stream a little bit after, and I guess talk about just some random stuff, and then I'll probably.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna try streaming in like an hour.
Okay, cool. I'll just host you whenever you start your stream. All right, guys. I'm gonna go to the thanks for watching screen, and you guys can listen to some music.
Someone says, what is the podcast? Is not the same time. 1 p.m. PST next week, Tuesday.
Yep. 1 p.m. PST. Every Tuesday, hopefully, unless one of us has some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
all right, everybody.
We'll give you a heads up.
Yep, we'll give you a heads up. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, MrMouton, the Albert Chang.
Slightly Musical on everything else.
Okay.
God, all right.
All right, swapping screens. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out. This has been Cinememes.